Anjalendran.
Hi,
Thanks a lot for having us here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Lionel Wendt to begin with.
Okay, quite often in Sri Lanka, we are always taught that the greats in the world exist outside Sri Lanka. We never ever look to Sri Lankans to inspire us. And you must know that, for example, when I come to be and so Jeffrey and get to know architecture, Jeffrey was not known most of the world. I mean, he himself probably had an inclination that he was great, but the world didn't go overboard on Jeffrey, right? Now, there are many people like that throughout Sri Lanka, and I would say that for me, where the outside world, and I would say that I don't know photography, would have been somebody like Lionel Wendt, but Lionel Wendt in his life, Magnum agreed that he was one of the 6 great photographers of the world. But generally, he was underplayed, and he moved again with 2 brilliant giants. One was George Keat, early George Keat, when George Keat also painted beautifully ordinary things like trees, houses, landscapes. And there was another guy called Andrew Boyd, an architect, who was always concerned about the everyday. Now, if you will find that there's a collaboration, you will find that Manjusri lived in Gautami Vihara. Manjusri invited George Keat to paint the murals, which are world class. And you will also find that Manjusri got Andrew Boyd to do the building, and Andrew Boyd did a clear story, so that without windows, light came from a clear story directly onto the painting. Now, these are, however simple, are very innovative ideas, And it is that Andrew Boyd, also inspired by Lionel Wendt, photographed the day to day. He was most interested in the day to day, and he wrote several essays, photo essays called Houses by the Road and things like that. So one of the things is that even people like Lionel Wendt didn't celebrate the extraordinary, they celebrated the everyday. Now, that is a very akin to somebody like me, because I think that in Sri Lanka there is a pomposity that, like architecture is only for the rich or the foreign tourists, right? Not for ordinary people, right? And this generally greats include people like Chitrasena, Like I remember when I was 10 years old, that's in 1960, sitting on my mother's lap and watching Chitrasena dance Arjuna. And for me, it was actually a god on stage, And I was completely convinced that whatever I loved in the world essentially was in Sri Lanka, And you'll get that thought process very clearly in Lionel Wendt, And I think that is very important, because all of us now look at Lionel Wendt as somebody you possess, not what he set out to be, right? If you look at all his photographs, most of them, I would think 90% of them were actually of the everyday. Yeah. Then of course he had sensuous and surreal, way beyond their time, right? But basically he actually loved and appreciated the everyday through his own unique eye.
Yeah, in fact I must agree with you, because during this process of curating this edition of the magazine, what I found very significantly characteristic of Lionel Wendt's work was that he not only celebrated the human form, but the human spirit, that of Sri Lanka's ancient traditions, and brought it through a valiant imagination.
Yes.
Public imagining that bring forth the authenticity of Sri Lanka. And for me, what I like of Lionel Wendt is that he provides an alternative narrative to seeing Sri Lanka from the eye of an artist, as opposed to the commercial way that Sri Lanka is constantly being portrayed now as a space that needs development when we are far richer.
Unfortunately, that's absolutely true in architecture. That is to say that Now, for example, we have 2 awards, but except for one project in each, the SLI Awards and the Jeffrey Bar Awards, all are about rich projects, you know. So I think that this notion of a simple, ordinary, everyday is missing in our vocabulary, and I think that is for me my main my main lesson which I can get from Lionel Wendt, you know.
Anjalendran, could you elaborate on a favorite, if at all, that you have of a Lionel Wendt photograph?
Okay, it's very simple, but it has nothing to do with everyday. You must know that I was just fortunate to buy, it's in the book,
Yes.
of a man with a rope,
Yes.
with his palm fronds at the back. I think for me, it is probably easily the most beautiful Lionel Wendt, okay? And the reason is that, I mean, I don't know, Dominic showed this photograph of a man jumping over a puddle with this reflection on the puddle, taken by Henry Cartier-Bresson, called the decisive moment. And for me, even though this is a still life, it is a decisive moment, you know. So I think that, of course, we all know that Lionel Wendt found the male nude very sensuous, right? And I'm fortunate to say that I have several of those. I mean, sensuous doesn't, I don't think I have any of them which are vulgar. Some other collectors have it. But
But how could you call them vulgar? They're quite very beautifully bring out the
no,
the fluidity of the
no, but they are rather raw. I don't know.
Okay.
All mine. I mean, but Lionel Wendt also knew how to take.
Yes.
I mean, you know, now for example, I know that if you look at Michael Ondaatje, whom I went to see the Lionel Wendt prints with, in his book called Handwriting, he has a woman whose hair is over the head, completely sensuous. Yeah, and it's a still life, right? And I don't know how he could pick it up. But Lionel Wendt had that eye of making something simple into something sensuous, you know. He had that very clear knack, okay? So I should talk about photography. I won't claim I do know, but I can tell you that the person who taught me photography was my close friend Dominic Sanzoni, because he used to get me to not carry his bag but go with him for about 3-4 days every month to photograph anything we could find on the way, and we would sleep someplace also on the way.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and we did that for about 2-3 years, you know.
Really?
So yeah. He was my and I could see things in his eye, how he would adjust things, like how he would take a foot rug away because it's detracting and things like that, you know.